Recording in progress.
Dating input elements. So validators class will provide the properties for validating input elements. So in template forms, the validation is in UI level, here in controller level. That means here syntax will be like this. So above in template form, the syntax is this, and here the syntax will be in this way. Which class you are? This is not. So syntax for this is we can define a new form control. In that we have value and we have array. This array contains validators. Validators dot the validation. What is the validation required, min length, you can define in this way. Or if you are dealing with form builder, generally form builder have a control method. In the control method, you define the value and you define the validators. So what is the validation? You need to configure that. So when you are configuring individually without form builder, then we have to write through form control. And when you are using form builder, you have to apply by using control. Anywhere validations are same. Remember, here only the binding of validation is different, but displaying validations is same. That means if I want to display validation displaying is same, no change. Validation displaying means if it is valid, show required. If it is invalid, hide required. So such things you have to design in UI only. That means validation properties are defined in controller. However, the validation messages are configured in UI level only. So messages must be displayed in UI only. Only the validation properties are defined at controller level. So that is the basic how the validations are configured. Here some changes are there. We will see how to define and configure the validation. So let's take the same example, just one example. Now in this example we have, suppose we have name is a field and we want the name mandatory. That means required, min length, like attributes we have to define. Then what we have to do? First, we need to go to, I will remove the background color for that. I will remove the background color. Okay. Okay. So that we can see the form in a clean format there. Okay. Now for name, I want to add validation. Then generally in a template form, we write the validation in the element itself, required, min length and all. But now in model form, we have to go to the design where you are creating the control. So here we are designing the control name, and this name is having some default value. After that, we can put an array. We can put an array and we can set validators. Validations, they are defined from validators class. So from Angular forms, you have to import another class called validators. So validators is the class. By using these validators class, you can set the validations. So here we can define validators dot whatever the validations you want. I want required validation. If there are many validations, you know how to handle. So that means you can put here validators dot min length. Min length is a method. How many number? 4. Like this we can configure. Now what about messages? This is important. What about messages? We have to display the messages for it. Where the messages are displayed in the UI. So validation properties are defined in controller. However, the validation messages are configured in UI only. That means the validations messages must be displayed in UI only, here only. You have to design them. Same like how you designed for reactive forms we have to do. But here one problem is that, so previously what happened, we were able to access this name and verify whether name is valid or not. So is valid, is touched, like attributes we can verify. But here this name is not directly accessible. This name is not directly accessible. Form control name can directly use it, but that name is not directly accessible. That means you must able to access this name out of this form and then use for validation. How to access the name individually? Every control that you want to use for validation, you have to keep it outside the form. Currently, these are all in form builder service. Now I cannot access this name directly, so you cannot have any validation for that. So how to access this name property individually? Same like our previous, we will create another getter. This getter is for which one? Name field. For name field, we will create a getter. And what this getter have to do? So it should return this name control. That should return the name control. So this dot frm register dot get, which control it should get? Name. And it is of what type? As form control type. It is of type form control. That's how we need to define. That means which control you want to use for validation, that control you need to configure separately, because it is a member of this particular form. You cannot individually access it. If you want to access it, every time you have to access with reference of form. So how to separately access it without using the reference of the form? If you can create an accessor for it, then you can individually access it. That means we can individually access this name and we can use for validation. How to apply this now? Let's go to the design now. That is the name field. We need to put validation here. Then in the name field, At the name field, I am adding data definition. Already we know how to display the messages. Displaying is same like reactive form. That means here I need two messages. One message is name required. Another message is name to short, and minimum 4 characters. Name to short, minimum 4 characters. Like this I am defined. Now, when to display this, we have to add the validation, same like reactive forms, same. Template forms UI. That means here, what is the condition? Class I will give text danger, and what is the condition? As of now, both messages are displayed. Both messages are displayed. What is the condition? Here we have to write the condition ng if and what is the field name? Field name is name dot what is the property if name is invalid. That means if name is invalid, then it should display that message. If the name is invalid, it should display the message. Okay, but this message must be displayed when if it is an required error, you know how to add it. So ng if we have to use name dot errors. Errors is an object, and in that we have to use the property. What is it? Required. If it is required, then this required error must display. There is required problem. Similarly, one more option here, ng if what is it? Name dot errors, and if it is min length, then this must be displayed. The validation properties, how you are configuring, that is same like how you are using for reactive template forms. Now you see the same. Currently it shows name required. Conditions, everything same. Suppose I want to display when it is touched, then you already learned that mechanism. That means we can say name dot touched, and name is invalid. That means it will display when name is touched and it is invalid. When I click inside it and click outside, now name required message will come. And I am entering some name here, and it says name too short. Suppose I am entering like some fossil, now that is okay. And I am removing this, it is name too short, removing this name required. So how you configure in the UI, that is same, but validations are not defined in the control. That means for this control, we are not writing required, we are not writing min length. So, but it is using required and it is using min length. How to configure that? We have to configure by using validators. Validators required, validators min length, anything you can add. Only one more point extra here is you cannot access the field directly. So you need to use an accessor. Through the accessor, you have to access and you have to configure. So basically, user interface for displaying messages same, only validation properties will be changing. That means here syntactically, how do we write? I will give a point here. So syntax. So here we need to create an accessor. For example, first this dot frm register. So it is a form group, form builder dot group. It is a form builder group, and in this group we have a name field. In this group, we are adding a name field, and it is fb dot control, and its value is empty. And validators is an array. Validators, we have one validation that is required. Another is validators min length, like this. Min length, how many characters, like this. This is how we write validation for any element. After writing validation for that element, we cannot access that element directly. To access the element directly and use it, we need to create an accessor name. This accessor should return that element. That means it should return this dot frm register dot get and the name, so which is as form control. We have to return it as form control. Now we can use this name for validation in UI. That means if you want to display message, input type is equal to text, form control name is equal to name. And here for displaying messages, we will put a container ng if name is touched and name is invalid. If name is touched and name is invalid, then we put a span. First message is ng if name dot errors is a nullable type dot required. If it is required, then name required, this message should come. That is one message to display. And the second message is name to short, and we have to configure with a span ng if name dot errors and it is min length error. If it is min length error, so name to short span. That's how we need to configure the validation and close the div. So in the UI, validation attributes are same. In the UI validation, how you define to display messages is same. Only the point is your control will not have any validation attributes. So validation attributes are defined all in the controller level. For every control we define the same. And remember, for every control you have to define an accessor. Every element in form requires an accessor. So if you are using a form builder, every element in form requires an accessor. Accessor means specially we have getter. We have both getters and setters, right? So we need a getter in order to access the element and use it. So this is how we can design forms and work with the forms. Now at the end, we will see one end-to-end example. End-to-end example means we will use the forms for fetching the data from API and posting the data to API. How we can get and post, we will see that process. But for that, now we need to understand one more important, very major concept in Angular, that is routing. So let me give you the summary. The summary for forms. Summary, that is for Angular forms. What you learned about Angular forms? We have two type of forms, template driven and we have model driven. We learned about template driven by using ng model and ng form. Ng model and ng form. So ng model and ng forms. Now, how do we configure the model and how do we configure the form? Right. So, and we learned about validating template forms, validating the template forms. So for that we have learned about form state validation services and input state validation services and validation CSS classes. We discussed about how to use the validation CSS classes. And next, reactive forms. In reactive forms, form group, so form control and form builder. Form builder again have group, again have a control and it have an array. These three things we discussed. And validators. How do we use the validators? That is the validations. So validating the reactive forms and the model driven forms. So this complete example I will give you. So model form dot component dot ts. That complete example I will post, model form dot component dot ts. And model form dot component dot html. In that HTML, this is the UI. This is the complete example of reactive form, how to handle and how we can configure. Right. Next, after understanding the basic how to work with the forms, now one more important concept, that is how we can use Angular routing. Routing in Angular. Routing in Angular. So the major topics, the very important points: services, pipes, forms, and validations in Angular. And this is another major concept, that is routing. Technically, actually, what is this routing? Generally, traditional, that means web applications follow various techniques in building application. Web applications follow various techniques in building application. So many techniques are used in web application. So in building of web application, lot of techniques are used. Some of the techniques like model binding is a technique. Data binding is a technique. Event binding is a technique. Style binding is a technique. Caching is a technique. Routing is a technique. So many techniques are used in web applications. Every technique is used for different purpose. So web applications have a lot of techniques to use: model binding, data binding, event binding, style binding, caching, routing. These are the techniques. And generally, by seeing this, what you can understand is routing is a technique. Routing is a technique used in web applications. Routing is a technique used in web applications for configuring SEO and user-friendly URLs. Routing is a technique used in web applications for configuring SEO and user-friendly URLs. SEO is search engine friendly, user-friendly URLs. Actually, without routing, earlier URLs are very complex. It is hard for users, search engines to identify where the current location is. For example, without routing, how URL looks like. For example, I will show you. So this is a simple example, like without routing, the URL looks like this: http://www.amazon.in. For example, in Amazon, we are watching some electronics page. It will be like electronics. Suppose it is like some server side page. So then .jsp, php, asp, like that. In that, we are searching for mobiles. Then there will be a question mark. Category is equal to mobiles. and in that we are searching for a model, then again ampersand, then model is equal to say some brand is equal to Samsung. In that I am looking for the range minimum price 10,000. So then another ampersand, min price is equal to some 10,000, like this. This is how actually the URL looks like. Even today you can see such URLs, very complex. Now this is to get all the mobiles, Samsung mobiles, so which are above 10,000. Now this is very difficult for a user to remember and access next time. It is very difficult for user. You can bookmark, but bookmarks are only for that machine. Suppose I want to watch later on mobile, or I want to later watch on another PC where I haven't bookmarked this, then this is difficult. These are lengthy, complex URLs which are not even safe. Now with routing, so with routing this URL, so with routing this URL can transform in this way: http://www.amazon.in, and in this electronics, in this mobiles slash mobiles, in that Samsung, and in that 10,000. This is how the new URL looks like. This is more user friendly. Not just user friendly, this is SEO friendly, more user friendly, more search engine friendly. Search engines can even identify exactly which location you are currently accessing, so that next time they can recommend you to that particular location. Actually, I don't know from how many years you are using internet, but in the early days of YouTube, in the early days of shopping websites, suppose on YouTube, I will give example. In the beginning of YouTube, when YouTube first came, right, I don't know whether you know or not, in the beginning days when first YouTube came so many years back, so first days of YouTube, we found that there are a lot of videos on YouTube we can watch, and I spent almost 10-15 minutes time, and finally I found one video related to some topic. I watched that video. After that I finished, I closed, I went to my friend's home, and I want to show him that video, saying that I watched that video, I will show you. And again on his computer I opened YouTube and I forgot the location. Then again 10-15 minutes I have to spend where that video is, unable to find it. There is no history, like there is no offline videos, like there is no like marking. Those are all not there in the beginning of YouTube. That means I need to search for that video again where it is, right, on another machine. But now observe, you are watching a video, then automatically in the background it will use artificial intelligence. It will recommend the videos related to it. Not only that, next time it will, when you open on your PC, based on your IP address and all, location and all, it will recommend you the similar type of videos, and the previous videos you watched are in history. Not only that, so suppose you are searching for a product on Amazon, and you haven't purchased, you just searched for a product on Amazon and close it, and you open YouTube, suddenly you will find advertisements for that product on YouTube, right? On Gmail, on Facebook, you will see advertisements of what you have done in some other website. That means how this is happening, that means those websites are sharing data with others. And not only sharing data, one great feature here is they exactly know which topic you visited. That means they are not showing advertisement of Amazon, they are showing advertisement of exactly the product you searched on Amazon. That is possible if there are SEO friendly URLs. That made possible with the help of this technique called routing. Routing allows to create SEO friendly and user friendly URLs. What is SEO friendly URL means? SEO friendly URL can find exact location of topic and recommend later. SEO friendly URLs can find exact location of topic and recommend later. And user friendly URLs allow to query any content directly from URL. You can query any content directly from URL. That means suppose I want all Samsung mobiles, then I can simply write a query in the URL. You can easily query any content directly from URL. So actually routing allows ad hoc queries. Routing allows ad hoc queries. Ad hoc queries are nothing but, you can say, live queries. You can directly query any content from a page. We don't need to keep any queries written by default. We can keep all the queries ad hoc. That is, ad hoc queries means live queries. That means directly live in the URL, you can write what you are looking for and it will return it. So early days, we don't have these all techniques. So early days, we don't have all these mechanisms. But now all technologies, remember, routing uses AJAX calls. What is the advantage of AJAX calls? That means it implicitly uses AJAX calls. AJAX calls means, what is the advantage? Without reloading the complete page, it can add new content to page. That's what AJAX is. Without reloading the complete page, it can add new content to the page. That means it updates the page with new details without reloading the complete page, which can be done through AJAX earlier. Now we can easily manage that by using this routing. By using routing technique, we can easily manage. So in single page applications, so that we call it as SPA. In single page applications, user can stay on one page. User can stay on one page and can access everything. User can stay on one page and can access everything from the page. from the page. So with the help of routing technique in single page applications, user can stay on one page and can access everything from the page. That means user will stay on only one page and he can access everything. He can access everything from that page. That is the nature of single page application, and routing is one of the key feature for handling this. That means routing allows you to stay on one page and access everything onto that page. That is the difference. Already I told you in the beginning itself, like we have traditional web applications. Suppose we have a index page and we have the pages like login, we have like register, so we have like home. Now what happens is in traditional websites, so in index page, suppose we have links like home, login and register, and when user clicks on home, then it will navigate from index to home. You will navigate from one location to another. But in single page applications, you will stay in index page only. You will stay in index page only, and this home comes here, and that register comes here, register comes here, that login comes here. That means user will stay on only one page and will access everything onto that page. And this we can achieve by using routing. We can achieve by using routing. So how routing works, we will see that. How routing works, how the concept of routing works, we will see. And remember, routing, uh, routing, routing can be configured A, client side, and B, server side. Client side, server side, both routings are there. Angular is using routing client side. Routing client side. Java, .NET, PHP, Python like technologies, they use routing server side also. We have server side routing, we have client side routing. Angular is using routing client side, right? Generally Java, .NET, PHP, Python, Node.js, all these use routing server side for APIs. In API, they use that routing technique. When any data is requested, it will access that. For example, already we saw fake store, if you remembered. When we open fake store api.com, fakestoreapi.com/products/2, this is using routing. That means it will return the second product related details. If it is not using routing, then what actually will be, it will be like question mark. So ID is equal to, right? ID is equal to how much, to, like this it will be. So it is using routing technique. It is using routing server side in APIs. That means this is also using routing. If it is not using